Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everybody. Thank you for tuning in to another Supatease video. It's been a little bit over a week now since the class balance changes had come in, and we've had some inflation. So activity has had an uptick as well, since now it's easier to get some ratings. So I wanted to see what's going on. Where's the shift happening? Which specializations are starting to rise to the top? Which ones are starting to disappear into the ether? And as always, if you want to make sure that you're staying up to date with news related to World of Warcraft, educational and entertaining content, then make sure to smash that subscribe button. Your support is greatly appreciated. So I think the first most obvious trend that I'm noticing right now for the melee DPS portion of this video is that Arms Warrior is really starting to take over. It is starting to rip. Arms Warrior stonks all-time high right now, and usually when that happens, Ret Paladin is closely behind, if not usually actually ahead of it. So Arms Warrior, this is something I'm thinking I'm going to have to gear up. You know, I leveled it. I've got it ready. I just need a little bit more conquest farmed on it at the moment, which if you're trying to gear up your character from scratch, the best way to do it I'd recommend is crate farming, which you can find in the custom LFG PvP section. If you can't do that, if you have a healer specialization, playing Shuffle, every time you play a Shuffle, you get a box that you can open that has a token that can be used to acquire 50 conquests that you can mail to your alts. If they're on a different server, you're going to have to put it in your warband bank. Those are the two best ways that I've noticed to farm gear. If you're just playing with honor gear, it can be very challenging to actually win rated matches in order to get conquest. So those two other ways get around having to play with that. You can play on a fully geared character or just fly around the world looting crates in order to get your conquest. Those are the strategies I'd recommend. It'd be really nice if they put some like PvP events, like catch-up mechanic events like they do for PvE at certain points in the series, where you could participate in different types of PvP and get enhanced conquest gains from them or something, because it can be very tedious. But I think I'm going to have to give my warrior another run here, because this is very noticeably starting to take over. Retribution Paladin just still very solid, one shot with the spinning hammers, doesn't really do a lot of damage outside of that, but has great defense and utility to keep the game going into the point where it can ultimately connect a one shot. Subtlety Rogue is still holding it into a strong position. I think that's likely due to the healer balance that we are seeing at the moment, especially when it comes to things like Solo Shuffle. This is the 3v3 chart at the moment, actually, so let's just take a quick little hop over to the Shuffle side of things, because I thought I was looking at the Shuffle side of things, but apparently I was looking at the 3v3 side of things. So Warrior taking over the 3v3 bracket. In the Shuffle side of things, Ret Paladin is still kind of holding it down. I think the main difference here between Shuffle and 3v3 is that Ret Paladin doesn't really have bad lobbies anymore now that it's kind of mid-ranged, whereas Warrior, you can get bad lobbies. And given how good I'm expecting some of the range DPS specializations are that counter you, I'm surprised it honestly still has this high of representation. This is still a very healthy margin for Solo Shuffle. And then Windwalker Monk, just crazy one-shot in its Zenith cooldown, is absolutely carrying it at the moment. Is a little bit more fragile, which is maybe why it's not completely running the show at the moment. And then Enhancement Shaman is absolutely ripping up on stonks right now. This guy is doing so much damage. It's funny, these guys are basically the same class. They pop Zenith, he pops Ascendance or Doomwinds, and you absolutely one-shot somebody. But Ret Paladin has a little bit more sustainability, I think, into the late game, better utility, and more guarantees that it gets its damage off relative to Windwalker or Enhancement, which I think is the main difference, because they're basically the same archetype, right? They're all hybrid melee with utility and one-shots, but Ret Paladin gets a little bit more certainty around its burst. Windwalker can be kited more easily. Enhance can just be hard countered by Disarm. Ret doesn't really get countered in the same way that they do, even though they're all fundamentally under the same archetype. Unholy DK is still holding solid. I was honestly expecting a shift. I thought Frost would start coming up and Unholy would start to fall off, because I do see more Frost at nights, but Unholy seems to just be doing fine. Even given the fact that like these three specs absolutely munch you, and with how strong Beast Mastery Hunters are, it's pretty decent for Unholy, at least when it comes to ladder gameplay. Subtlety Rogue is now the dominant rogue specialization, although they're kind of equalizing out into a more balanced state since the changes that came through. I think the main reason for Subtlety Rogue to be the most represented at the moment is because they just hard counter Prezivoker, and we are seeing Prezivoker completely steal the show, frankly, when it comes to healer balance. I think that is one main thing to consider. Outlaw is still in a solid spot, way higher than its representation normally is, unless it's really extremely overpowered. And it's still got a great pop with its Adrenaline Rush window, but not as crazy as it was prior, but it seems like it's still holding a solid spot. We'll have to see how it trends. That's why we do this weekly, to see how the trends are, because right now it's holding middle of the pack in a solid spot. Honestly, a pretty healthy spot, in my opinion, for a spec that's as complicated as Outlaw is. And then Assassination is starting to climb up the ranks, and I think it's because it does such a crazy one-shot. Although its one-shot is a lot more setup dependent, a lot easier to counter than these guys up here, and you're far squishier, offering less utility to your team. So I do think that's why Assassination is trailing behind these guys, even though their lethality is probably, in some cases, maybe higher than some of these other specializations, but it's just so obvious. So you can see it coming with the dot ramps, the death mark, and the King's Bane. There's a lot of global cooldowns that lead into it that will trigger players to know that you're about to do a lot of damage. Feral Druid has climbed up a few ranks. It used to be a little bit lower than this. I think it was like down here. It's just a well-rounded class. Like, it's got great stuns, I think, is the main reason that it's kind of carrying the show at the moment. Is just low cooldown, high duration stuns are valuable in PvP. Basically, every other class had its stuns reduced significantly, aside from Subtlety Rogue and Feral Druid. So I think the stuns will carry you here, and you still have the option to Cyclone and really good damage overall, but complexity is the main thing. I think that unless Feral Druid is completely giga broken, is the main thing holding it back. Although it is easier to play than it was before, I think it's still more complicated than the other options, and it doesn't have that big bonk button. You know, like a lot of these melee, if you got a big bonk button, you know, average players can press the big bonk button. Feral Druid doesn't have that, so less people often play it. Frost Death Knight, though, has a major big bonk button, and it's actually lower than Feral Druid, which I'm surprised, because I actually think it's really good. I think Frost DK, some cases, I think it's better than Unholy DK, but for the same reasons with like Enhancement Shaman, you're just hard countered by Disarm. Warrior, Windwalker, Rogues, they all have Disarms. They're all a very respectable representation at the moment. So this is probably the main reason why we don't see more of them. Fury Warrior was a spec that I thought was going to take over, but it seems like Arms is the one in control, and I think that might be more of an indicator that these other melee specs are just really popular, and Arms does better into melee DPS, whereas Fury does better into Shadow Priest, it does better into Warlocks, and I think even in some cases Mages. But Arms is better into the melee, and melee are stronger at the moment. So if Shadow Priest and Warlocks get more buffs, then I think Fury Warrior could see a tick up here, because I don't think it's that bad. And honestly, this isn't even too far behind like where Feral Druid or Frost Death Knight is, and there's only so many Warrior players, right? So Fury, let's say it's even 5% worse than Arms, everybody will switch to Arms, and it'll seem low, but it doesn't mean that's bad. I definitely think you can make Fury Warrior work. Survival Hunter, another one. It's got a big one-shot button with its takedown, but it doesn't really have a lot going on outside of that. And Marksman and Beastmaster just provide way more suppression without the liability of having to be in melee range all the time like Survival does. So for me, like, it's an okay amount of representation. It's not nothing, obviously, for the top 5,000, but it's definitely towards the lower end. I think it probably needs some utility brought back to it, if it's going to be, you know, the only melee hunter spec. But frankly, I'm not a big fan of the big bonk button classes. I thought the whole purpose of this expansion was to move away from cooldowns, completely destroying people and then feeling like you're doing nothing outside of them. So there's obviously a lot of specializations here on the melee side of things that are in that boat, and it's making healing more stressful. It's making the games a lot more unpredictable for new players, and then for advanced players, you just get hard countered by crowd control, and it just feels miserable because the other team knows exactly what you're doing. With the add-ons they're using, which again I'm also still kind of annoyed about, is like, I thought these add-ons were supposed to go away. Everyone's still playing with weird janky versions of them, but they work, and then except you destroyed my damage meter, so now I can't like properly assess what's going on in matches. So I'm a little bit irritated about all that combined together, because it's just like what did we accomplish here? It doesn't feel like we accomplished too much. Havoc Demon Hunter, lowest represented melee. I was expecting this one to trend towards the bottom. Doesn't have the big bonk button. Can do a decent amount of sustained damage. I've seen some Demon Hunters posting about bugs related to its Blade Dance and its Death Sweep doing lower than intended damage. I don't know if that's an actual bug or it's just not getting enough social media attention for them to do anything about it, because I don't know, because that does seem like a pretty big bug if you're losing 20% damage on your major ability. But I think that's the main reason that we see it trending towards the bottom here. And Demon Hunter just doesn't do well when stun lock one-shot buttons are the meta. It doesn't. It's much like Fury Warrior. It does really well in Shadow Priest, and Warlocks are good, and we just aren't in that meta. I don't know if we ever will get a meta that's more dot centric and damage over time centric. I'd love to get a season where we actually do, because I miss the dots, man. I miss the Shadow Priests and Warlocks and Fire Mages and Boomkins and Ellies and dots. I miss my dots, man. We've had this Zug Ret Fest for so long, and I'm really missing my dots. But I think it's the main reason we see Havoc coming down at the bottom. When we look at range DPS, Beast Mastery still in full control. in the number one position, and it's mostly just because Beast of Wrath has such a low cooldown that you basically have your cooldown up the entire game. So go figure, the class that has its cooldown up the whole game is the best class in a game based around cooldown damage. Frost Mage, on the other hand, is its defense. It just has so much defense. 2 charges of Ice Barrier is really strong with the overpowered PP talent. 2 charges of Ice Block is actually way better than Cold Snap as far as the frequency of getting your Ice Block. Alter Time lasting for 10 seconds is a very powerful effect as well. All of these abilities basically effectively immune you to damage. And then obviously you have the invisibilities, which can make you go immune to damage for 1 to 3 seconds, which oftentimes is more than enough to survive. I mean, I'm trying to imagine if a hunter had 4 charges of Feign Death, and they could Feign Death your damage hit, and then a couple seconds later Feign Death your damage hit, and a couple seconds later Feign Death your damage hit. It'd be really tough to kill them. That's basically what Frost Mage can do. And it's also the best at crowd controlling melee, which are very dominant, and it's the best at controlling Beast Mastery Hunter pets. So I think those are the main reasons that we see Frost Mage at the top, and its damage output is obviously nothing to scoff at, but I think defense is more notably the reason why we see it here, because unlike Fire Mage, which is just completely falling into the abyss, it didn't have that type of defense, and they nerfed its one-shot damage. So this is an example where they nerfed cooldowns effectively on Fire Mage, but they didn't compensate you enough. They give you like 85% on Fireball. I don't see Fire Mages ever even pressing Fireball, so obviously that wasn't enough if the intent was to shift them to being kind of like a standstill nuke-based caster, which I don't think they can really get away with because they're so fragile. They didn't really get compensated. So they nerfed their cooldowns. Great, love that. Just didn't get compensated appropriately enough, so Fire Mage is starting to just disappear. Marksman Hunter really likes the rebuffs that they added to them. I like that they focused on abilities like Arcane Shot and buffing other abilities than just outside of their True Shot window, although maybe their True Shot window could come down a bit. Affliction Warlock is really starting to actually shine here in Shadow Priest, and I was just talking about, like, maybe these dot specs come up, like a couple of nerfs towards these guys, a couple of nerfs towards maybe Warriors and Windwalkers, and like we might have Shadow Priest Warlock coming up to the top. I have to play my Warlock again because I'm surprised to see Warlock actually this well represented between this rating threshold. So it's very interesting. And Shadow Priest, I made one yesterday, and I was actually not playing in too much gear, and I had a lot of fun in Battleground Blitz on it. It was actually a lot of fun. I'm going to spend a lot more time, I think, with the Shadow Priest. I think Shadow Priest might be underrated, at least when it comes to ladder. Now, tournament play, obviously, there's a lot more specifics that come into the viability and competitive nature specs in that environment. But when it comes to ladder gameplay, I had a lot of fun with my Shadow Priest here pretty recently. Devourer Demon Hunter still doing really well, even despite the nerfs that we're targeting its burst. It's still able to get a lot of cool windows there, and it's got a unique flavor compared to Havoc, which I do appreciate as well on this specialization. Comp variety, you're kind of limited. You would rather play with Mortal Strike based specs because Shuffle has faster dampening, which is I think a main reason why we see these specs able to do this well, is because dampening moves faster. But Devour can still get it done. We talked about Fire Mage and the issues that it has. Destruction Warlock could use like a little bit more of a juice, just a little more juice. I think it bumped it up a bit, but a lot of these guys, they just do so much damage for such little effort, and just pet auto attacks, and this guy's just invincible, instant lancing you, and you're just like, I'm trying to Chaos Bolt, oh, he feigned death. I'm trying to Chaos Bolt, oh, he barriered it. I'm trying to Chaos Bolt, oh, he invised it. I'm trying to Chaos Bolt, oh, he barriered it again. I'm trying to Chaos Bolt, he altered it. He's trying to Chaos Bolt, he kicked me. Oh, he's trying to Chaos Bolt, he sheet. Like, you're just not able to do anything. So, I mean, you could bump up the damage on this again. They probably need to look at the defense on Frostmage, though. Boomkin, the buffs to Boomkin were solid. I just got to like top 5 Boomkins. I think it was almost 2,400 since the MMR injection as well. It's good. I think it's good. But again, the main issue I've had with Boomkin is just the defense on Mage is too high. And then Beast Mastery, I don't really know what you could do to this spec because it's basically only viable because it does damage. And if you take the damage away, then it doesn't have any other abilities. So it's in a weird spot. But Boomkin, I think, is actually solid. Could maybe use a little bit more of a juice, maybe like on its Wraths or Starfire damage. Elemental Shaman, lower represented here. It's much the same like Enhance, is just really big burst in its Ascendance window and then not doing too much. And it struggles a lot, honestly. I was with some of the melee, like, oh my god, I got a couple Assassination Rogue lobbies on my Ellie, and I'm gonna go Dwarf almost after it because it was just like, what? I was just dying immediately. So if you are playing an Elemental, I would highly recommend that you play Dwarf at the moment, because any of these like Assassination Rogue one shots will absolutely rock your world. And it's not too bad, honestly, into some of the other classes as well, like Feral. Too. Devastation Evoker, still towards the bottom end. While I still recommend this as one of the best for beginners, other than maybe Beastmaster Hunter, it's still actually towards the tail end of overall representation on the upper end of the ladder. Now, maybe this is because It's not so good into rogues typically, and rogue is still very popular, although it's very good into warriors and rets typically. But maybe the healer balance could also be another reason. I don't know how good Double Dragon is necessarily as a competitive option, so maybe there's some weakness there. I'm going to have to level my Evoker with the remaining time walking week here maybe and give it a go myself, because I recommend this all the time, and I'm still just surprised that it's not higher than this, because it's one of the simplest specs to play, and I think it's just very straightforward to get things done. Demonology Warlock falling to the lowest represented Warlock spec. This guy was looking like it was going to be the best spec for the launch of the expansion, and then nerf, and then a bit of time later, this is where we're at, right? It's a spec where it's based around sustained damage, which is great, but in a world where these guys get so much damage out of their Beast of Wrath cooldown, or are just borderline unkillable with 10 different ways to negate you from actually attacking them, you're just not that effective. Unfortunately, and you kind of get ran down by a lot of the melee DPS too. So Demonology probably needs like a little bit of juice, honestly, if there's any more future class tuning coming in here, which maybe there will be. It's Friday. If there is, we'll relay it here on the channel, so make sure you're subscribed so you don't miss out. And then Arcane Mage, I've been bringing this up every single week, right? It's the same thing every single week. It just has a lot of liabilities. You have to cast your cooldown. You have to cast most of your significant burst. Lots of drawbacks in that regard. You don't have the same type of extra durability layers that Frost Mage gets. And then your rotation is just a little bit janky. With what they've done for the PvE rework, and I think PvEers are also not super happy with how it ended up. So if I had to guess, I would think Arcane gets some serious type of rework throughout Midnight, if not the next expansion. But for right now, kind of just one of those unique cheese specs that you're going to try and do something with. I've seen a lot of Alunith clips where he's playing Arcane Orb, not Arcane, or Arcane Sphere, where Arcanosphere, where he lines up an ice wall and he casts it behind the wall and then cancels the wall so he can't be kicked on it. It looks really cool when he does it, to be honest. So in like those battleground scenarios, you can have a little bit of fun with it, but as a competitive ladder spec, it's going to be frustrating. And then poor Aug Evokers, there's two of you apparently out there actually trying to make it happen. You're so small, you barely even show up on the blip. I didn't even think my mouse was going to be able to fit hovering over that to see that. You guys just caught strays from nerfs for PvE, and honestly, Demonology might even catch more strays because it's really good in PvE. And yeah, it's just flying at the bottom. Maybe it's strong, we don't know. Maybe these two guys are geniuses. Like, I kind of want to look at the top 100. Well, imagine if it's an Aug. It's not an Aug, but there is a Shadow Priest in the top 100. Very interesting, the Shadow Priest in the top 100. So the rating bump is definitely helping out here. And then healers, finally, I don't even understand, because 1 week I'm like, the healer balance is actually looking good. Like, it feels this is nice. Like, we're going in a solid direction. When you look at top 5,000 though, Disc Priest is actually still number one. I was fully expecting Prez Evoker to be number one. It's number two, but Discipline Priest is in a really good spot as far as solo shuffle ladder play. I was really expecting Prez. Like, what about top 100? Does this shift around? Because I'm actually blown away. Oh, there we go. So top 100, Prez Evoker completely takes over. Top 500, it's still taking over. Top 1,000, it's still taking over. So, but when you look towards the bottom end, you can still get a lot done with Disc Priest. So if you're trying to go for like the Galaxy Illusion Elite set type of deal, Discipline Priest seems like it is a good spec to go for. But Prez Evoker, the Verdant Embrace, double charge, crowd control immunity with Nullifying Shroud is just a really strong mechanic. Honestly, I think as a flag carrier, you need to not be able to use Dream Breath and Deep Breath, because my God, they just get across the entire map completely immune to everything, and it looks crazy. And then they hover and they're immune to snares on top of that. They're basically like the old school Mistweaver flag carriers. I think they're actually more egregious in Battlegrounds. And then they can also Sleepwalk, which disorient targets, and then Typhoon them off edges. And that disconnects people, so they can disconnect people. They're the best flag carriers. They absolutely just destroy battleground balance at the moment. I think some tweaks definitely need to be made there. But when it comes to the shuffle side of things, it's just very tough as an uncoordinated group with the dragon just flying in and muting crowd control intermittently, and you're accidentally stunned into it because they're just doing it all the time. At the same time, I'm like, they kind of need some type of mechanic like that because they got to get close to the fight. But at the moment, it seems really strong. So maybe either you need to target the crowd control immunities or maybe some of their throughput a bit to bring it down. But it's a good healer to go after if you want to play one. Mistweaver is just good. They got it in a really good spot after all the changes. I think it's maybe got a little bit of mana issues, but you got to have some drawbacks as well as a healer. Resto Druid is still very strong as well. You just want to make sure you're wearing the right stats, unlike me playing on hard mode with full Boomkin gear. But you definitely want to have more mastery with this one. But it's a very effective healer. I think it's a little more nuanced and complicated with how you've got to use Soul of the Forest and how you recover from specific scenarios. A lot of other healers are very straightforward, like just press your big heal and it just boom, target goes up. Resto Druid doesn't really have that. You got to be much more premeditated which is why I think towards the top 5,000 we don't see a lot of it. But when we looked at the upper ranks, it was a lot more of them. So the higher skilled players able to make more out of it. Whereas Holy Paladin is equal to Druid at this rating, and Shaman is honestly, I think Shaman might be on the come up. It's not a Prez Evoker by any means, but I definitely think on ladder Resto Shaman is doing a lot better than it was before. And I don't even have the right stats on mine when I've been playing it, and it's been feeling better. And I've been seeing a lot of other shamans. The healer balance is getting better. They just got to keep a tab on Preservation Evoker, and probably keep a tab on buffing these 3 guys on the bottom a little bit. Tiny bit of buffs for Holy Paladin, Resto Shaman, and Holy Priest, and then bring down Prez. And then healer balance. I mean, it's getting better, right? Like these are a lot. I don't even understand how Discipline Priest is actually this high, other than just it's a really popular spec because it does damage, right? Like if you're a DPS player who wants fast Qs, play a Discipline Priest because you can play Void Weaver and just basically be a DPS that has instant Qs. Holy Priest is starting to fall off a lot more, and it was weird because when they nerfed Mist River, I was like, I'm pretty sure Holy Priest is going to take over. We were wrong. Holy Priest actually is just falling down into potentially almost the weakest position of any healer. Now, maybe it's because sustain is higher now with warriors in the meta, whereas Holy Priest before was really good at like targeted healing, waiting for a target to get to 20% and healing to full, and then able to wait until they got there again based on the enemy's cooldowns. But now that there's more sustain damage in the game, that could be attributing to why they're lesser represented at the moment when it comes to healers. But that's my breakdown for the classes for this week's update. I hope you guys enjoyed the discussion. Thank you guys very much for tuning into the video, and I will see you in the next one.